All right, what's up? What's up, everybody? That's weird. Is that not updated? Let me refresh my stack. There we go. Stack. All right, there we go. Good to have you, Winters Designs. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if there's any issues. I've just got the stacks flow up right now, but I know most of you guys are probably here wanting to figure out and know what's going on with our earnings for NVIDIA today. Here we go. Sorry about that, a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're good. Everything's working fine now. All right. Fix my trading view real quick too, guys. WDC, yes, STAX AI did give us a few WDC. We got a Tesla today or yesterday, but WDC puts for 230 for June. They're kind of pricey, I will say that. But I want to say, and I will say that the chart is looking fairly overextended to the upside. We are starting to see bits of bearish divergence. So you can see how my indicator here is showing that, you know, it kind of wants to come down a little bit. Dividend comes and pays out in next week. But, you know, it's one of those trades where I feel like it's fairly overextended to the upside. Even on the weekly, if you take a look, the weekly just keeps on going higher and higher, right? Have it just accelerating to the upside, and indicators are starting to show that it might be time for a little more significant pullback. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it come down, maybe make another bounce, and then come down further from there. But a big part of this is there seems to be some exhaustion in the AI trade. You know, that's a big part of why you guys are probably here today, trying to figure out what's going on with NVIDIA. And I just talked with Max before this, but let me read off a couple of things that we were discussing. So Q4, oh, let me make sure. I always forget to do this. Got to switch us over to, there we go. All right, NVIDIA. What are the things that we need to know? What's the information that's out there that we need to discuss? All right, number one. It's today after close. They do have their earnings call, which is very important, but the consensus overall is that it's going to be $66 billion in revenue, which is a 68% year over year, with a $1.53 EPS, which is 72% year over year. I want you guys to understand how big those numbers are. So the bar has already been raised, and the expectation is extremely high because they were giving such high projections from last year. There is a little bit of concern that these could be revised, simply because the fact is, you know, the competition started to ramp up. All right, the data center revenue should be about $60 billion, which is 90% of their revenue. Right. So are the data centers being built? Is it really bringing in all that extra money? And you know, the bar is stratospheric, right? Last quarter, $57 billion revenue, 1.3 EPS, which were both beats. But basically, expectations have gone higher, and capex continues to go higher. All right. Another big problem is we saw with OpenAI, kind of being the middle of it, now showing that they're not actually making revenue. They were projected to make about $14 billion per year. Now it's been shown that it's very likely they're going to lose about that much this year. We saw Microsoft drop pretty significantly due to that news, due to the fact that Microsoft has a pretty big stake in OpenAI. But NVIDIA, you can consider it. NVIDIA, the chips are a very big part of this AI trade, right? So number one, hyperscaler capex, Blackwell ramp. They do have a backlog of millions of GPUs, but the question on that one is the demand still there? Are they going to continue to, do they continue to have that backlog? Are people starting to consider other alternatives because that backlog is so big and because there are a lot more competitors now in the space? Max and I both agree. It's Jensen Huang. He's the Jordan of the stock market, right? He's the Wayne Gretzky. He's great with his PR. He's great with the way that he frames things and the way he explains things. But if there is any sort of pushback with it, I find it hard to believe that he's not going to be prepared with answers. But if there is any sort of hesitation in the trade, we could definitely see a sell-off. All right. If demand continues to accelerate, we very possibly will see NVIDIA up above 200 within the next week or so. But if they're, if the pipeline is, just what's expected, they don't really show those big beats, then it's very possible that we might have a bit more of a sell-off. They do have the announcement of a new chip that they're about to push out. Question is going to be when. Question is are there already orders ramping up? Are there people already asking for them? That will be a big part of the earnings call and what they have to say. The implied move so far, I want to share this with you too. The implied move for NVIDIA, this is just bar charts. You guys can pull this up yourself. IV actually isn't as high as we've seen for some of their previous earnings. But I will say the expected move here is only about like $9, almost $10 to the up or downside, which is only about a 5% move. We've definitely experienced 8 to 10%, even more in previous earnings calls. So this is one of the lowest expected moves. And IV being at 100, even though that's high for NVIDIA's earning call, that's actually not that bad. Okay, so the upper bound, we could definitely see NVIDIA by tomorrow above 200, about 207, or down toward 187. That's what options pricing is valuing this move for this earnings, this earnings report. All right. Obviously, with a beat or a miss, these numbers can accelerate. So we have to be careful with that. Now, Max and I kind of agree is the fact that there have been quite a few of these where you actually see market makers burn both sides of the tape. What that means is that it's possible we're going to, get all this news, it's going to digest, and all of a sudden we're just going to see price stay relatively flat moving into tomorrow. So it's possible we'll see drastic moves overnight, and then all of a sudden in the morning we'll probably see maybe a 1 to 2% move up or down, and it kind of burns everything out through Friday. Okay. Then we'll see the real move happen starting next week. So that's that's our prediction. Obviously, it's our opinion. You guys can take it or leave it, up to you. But at the end of the day, it's one of those situations where it's a big event, a big deal. Some things that we do need to consider. So there's some conflicting signals here on STAX that I do want to point out. You can take what side you feel best suits your risk profile and what you believe in. Number one is the fact that insiders have been selling very, very heavy for the last almost like year, almost 2 years now. All right, so when you take a look into NVIDIA, obviously with NVIDIA's crazy rise to the top, we will see this selling because these they're gonna cash out. They're gonna go buy their yachts and their mansions with the money that they've made. So the insiders on NVIDIA have not been buying. Okay. On the other hand, our WaveX, which is basically our premium flow scanner, is telling us that there's a lot of heavy positioning to the upside. So there's a lot of calls being taken, a lot of puts actually being sold off. And earlier today, right before earnings is being reported, just earlier today, we actually saw, this is for the buys, saw quite a bit of bullish positioning. The ones that really stuck out to me was that they were aiming for 2027, January 2027, the 260 calls. These are definitely more on the pricier end because they are leaps, because they do expect a 32% move to the upside in time. Okay. The short-term stuff that we're seeing a lot of $200 strike for Friday. Also for the March 20th, 320, we see a lot of 210s and 200s in particular. Right here, 2.3 mil spent on that. $5 per share, so $500 for that contract. Only about a 6% move up. But again, I think that one, if you're expecting a bullish result, I would say that 210 March isn't a bad idea. All right. If you need a little bit cheaper, they are aiming for 215. We have seen in the short term as well. I think that's about you. Yeah, we saw a few 220s, but these are generally going to be a bit further out. So you could even say April 17th, 220, still around that price range. If you're on the smaller account size, cheaper possible contracts, April 17th, 240, $1.82. And then the one that was a bit more, where was it? Right. This one's pretty risky, but 227, so this Friday, the 210 strike, $1.29. All right. So you can kind of see they're positioning themselves all over the place. Now on the put side, if you think that this report is going to be potentially the start of a bearish, collapse when it comes down to the AI trade, because remember, NVIDIA is at the center of this entire thing. We are seeing quite a bit of 190 strike aiming for, below 200 by December for this one. End of the week below 197 and a half. That's like barely in the money right now. And we will say that there was quite a bit. So 313, 195, 175 in terms of the puts. We are seeing, keep in mind, these very possibly could just be hedges against some bigger positions where they are, maybe they have hundreds of $1 million of NVIDIA stock and this is just their protection, their insurance. Now, for the chart, I personally have been a bit more on the bearish side of NVIDIA. But with that also being said, there is still a very good possibility that we could see one more push to the upside. Okay. So, if this earnings call is still good, I'm reluctant to say that the AI trade is completely over. Okay. I still think that there's still money flowing around. The question right now though is the fact that AI still has quite a bit to prove. There's actually quite a bit of negative news surrounding AI lately. Okay. We just heard about Anthropic. The US government is asking Anthropic to lower their safeguards, but we also just saw something where it helped somebody hack the Mexican government and took a bunch of information there. We're seeing some engineers using these AI tools and all of a sudden it deletes their hard drive or wipes out their email log. Like there's a lot of little things where it's like, okay, well, the general public still has hesitations against AI, and if these pieces, these hit pieces, continue to come out, it's gonna kind of dampen the speed at which it's moving at. The other thing is the fact that while we are building data centers, while money is flowing into it, we don't have the energy capacity to power them at this point. And there is legislation that's being put in place so that these big companies that want these data centers are going to be forced to build their own power sources in order to fund it. So, I think it's very possible we chop around by tomorrow, somewhere between 195 and 200, and we see a bigger move starting next week. That's where I think, I'd probably say 60-70% chance that's what's going to happen. On the possibility that we see a massive beat, we definitely do shoot back up toward the 210 range. Keep in mind, there are some of those options that are aiming for well above, so new all-time highs is still a possibility. We could still see another upthrust. We could say this was actually the first upthrust, and we see another upthrust after distribution up top. There are a few signs of weakness showing in this situation. So again, this could be the moment if we see, if we don't quite meet expectations or just come in flat in terms of expectations, it might just chop around and then start to sell off afterward. So that's where I would say the risk is with NVIDIA. If anybody tells you they know exactly what's going to happen, ask them to show you their crystal ball, because this is all based upon probabilities. We are seeing some heavy bull flow in STAX, in the option flow. However, like I said, the insider trades, everybody's selling, so that's not exactly the best sign. This overlay that I do have on here, I believe was put from where did I copy it from? I think it was, I have to double check, but it's a distribution scheme, this one right here, that shows the possibility of this trade after this last push up that we could start to sell off. That's where my thesis is that NVIDIA, while they were the big one in the race, they were way ahead in terms of their chip production. Now that a lot of other companies have started to catch up, do they have to start repricing their chips to get rid of stock? Like, if those things are going to have to happen, then that's where we start to see this stall out. You see earnings in about 9 minutes. I do also want to go over a couple of other ones. Snow is one. I think Snow looks very good in terms of long term. I originally thought that this was our first sign of strength where we could be headed up from. Looks like it came back down for another buy up and last point of supply. This company could still come back down to this trend line, but if it does, I would urge to buy because this is headed up in the long term. Snow reports today after close just as well. In terms of the tape, not a ton of prints to consider, but we do have these unusual calls for next week. The 190, which is a 12% move to the upside. And so far, we are seeing a little bit more bullishness than bearishness going in. Insiders are kind of all over the place, but mostly selling throughout the last couple months, last few years, last year or so. But we are seeing that happen with a lot of these software companies, and big tech is getting hit pretty hard. Salesforce. Nothing really in the tape. WaveX does not have all that much to say. Mostly puts being sold off. in terms of the flow. Charted this out for you guys a little bit ago. Salesforce has this head and shoulders to it. And generally, the understanding with this is you measure from the head to the neckline. You use that to predict how far it could potentially drop. I don't think it's going to come right down toward 110, really. We do have quite a bit of buyers and sellers in this range that it's going to have to fight through. But if it can't hold this 190, it's coming down. There's a gap at 169 down here. That still hasn't completely filled. And the point of control for the big picture here is at about 155. Another thing with AI is the fact that it really started to get into these software as a service companies, right? Because ultimately there is this expectation that, if I can just, if I can get a small engineering team to produce the code so that I have my own software to run, then I don't have to pay enterprise prices for big companies to handle that type of stuff. But you have to kind of think of it as well as what kind of moat or what kind of confidence do you have in some of these companies? Okay, so yeah, I could get AI to help me produce some sort of, CRM is a customer, what was it? Shoot, I can't think of the word. It's like your customer profiles, right? It helps you figure out how to deal with them, how to take care of them, emails and things like that. And a lot of big companies use it, but you want to think of it also as like, okay, what could you code and what requires the reputation of the company for you to, to be there. Okay, so for example, you could build your own email customer client base and go through that. You don't necessarily need CRM, right? Another example is Adobe, right? Adobe, Figma, all these other companies. Okay, if I had I could produce my own type of maybe Photoshop or image editing software. Okay, do I necessarily need Adobe's software to be able to produce what I need? There's an argument there. Some people are very attached to Photoshop and to their video editing services and things like that. But do they necessarily provide you a value that cannot be replaced? A good example would be something like Uber. All right, can I go and create my own app where it would be rideshare? Yeah, but am I necessarily going to get a bunch of people using it? Am I necessarily going to be able to profit off of it right away? No, like the customer base isn't there. The drivers aren't even there. Same with like Airbnb. Yeah, I can use AI and create some sort of service where I can share, housing and rent housing or short-term type of rentals. But I'm not going to have a bunch of houses to rent out. I'm not going to have people that know to use what I built to do so. It takes time. So, we saw CrowdStrike drop pretty significantly because, again, if I can have a security software and build a security software to use myself, I mean, it's to protect me, protect my infrastructure, right? So it doesn't necessarily need to have all of the previous client base or the previous knowledge of stuff. If it's AI that can help me build something and save me hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per year, we will start to see companies go toward that. But like I said, there is quite a bit of negativity around a lot of these AI services right now, just because we are starting to see some hiccups when it comes down to the way that they can affect companies. We got earnings coming up in just a little bit. If there's anything else you want me to go over in particular, please go ahead. Say something in the chat. Say hi if you're here, so I know that you're here. It's not like Discord where I can see who exactly is watching. And before we get into these earnings, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. There's 19 of you here. I'd love to see if I could get 19 thumbs up before we go into the earnings as we watch it. But yeah, earnings very possibly. It looks like it's probably going to be around 120 is where it's projected to be. You tell me, do you see NVIDIA going up or down after this earnings? Is it going to be a beat or a miss? I want to know. Yeah, we got some STAX people in here. I love it. Good to know you guys follow me from Discord over here. All right. Market close. We've got about probably 20 minutes till the report comes out. Pull up Twitter just to keep an eye on things. Twitter thinks it's supposed to report at 105. We'll see if it does. TradingView says 120. Either way, basically flat after hours. Still moved 1.4 throughout the day today. I was like, why is TTD got red candles moving up? It's because I had this inverted. So, man, TTD down even more. CRM down 3%. I don't think they've reported yet. No flat so far. Back to that. NVIDIA's while you guys are all here. This is... It's not as much of a Super Bowl as last time, but it is the Super Bowl of the stock market. There's a bunch of memes of how the entire AI trade rests on NVIDIA's earnings today. I think it's reporting at 120. Not happen at 105. Oh, quick snow is up 5%. Oh, by the way, so you guys didn't hear, there's this this news on Bitcoin where Jane Street was running an algorithm that dumped Bitcoin every morning at 10 a.m. So that it would crash the price, liquidate retail, and then they would buy it back lower. Right, so they just got sued for it, and now the 10 a.m. dump has stopped. All right, and Bitcoin actually today, Bitcoin's up 8%. So the interesting thing about it is this going to open up the doors for other firms to potentially get exposed? And does this lead into Bitcoin starting to run up, or potentially even still could lead into even more dumping? So we'll see. It's interesting that I'd love to know how they got caught with that. Jane Street just deleted all of their X posts. Man, Snowflake back to even. Salesforce down 3.5%, almost 4%. BTD is down 15%. Oof. Eesh. We got another 2-3 minutes till we see NVIDIA report. Tell me, you guys, what do you guys expect? Up or down? You want NVIDIA up or you want NVIDIA down? I already see some people in. It's a pretty big mix when it comes down to Twitter. One minute left. All right, we're gonna see the report in about 15 seconds. Five, four, three, two. No, not gonna move. Hmm. What's going on? Okay, let's see. EPS was a beat. $1.58 versus $1.53. Revenue was a beat. 67.4 billion versus 66.2. Data center at 61.3 billion. Gross margin above forecast. Guide 74 billion, which is above the consensus. That's real. We're not seeing any move so far. That's very interesting. They're just gonna chop around. Right, remember I said Max and I expect that we actually burn both sides. Probably stay within this range and make a move next, either Friday or next week. But it's very interesting not to see any real move. They push. That right? I'm seeing some conflicting info now. There's a couple things saying it's a double beat. I don't know if that's confirmed. Or at least the price is not moving like that's real. Hmm. Earnings being late is never, generally not going to be a good sign. Yeah, no, that's not real then. Yeah, there's something circulating on Twitter, but it doesn't seem like it's real. Hmm. So apparently back in 2023, they had delayed earnings report was a super beat, which caused price to go up. I'm expecting it might be at 130 then. I mean, they have their earnings call at 2. Yeah, I find it very interesting how it's not out yet. There is something circulating that seems to be fake. If they don't release it in the next minute or so, it might just be at their earnings call. Not expect that. Everybody's waiting for it. Huh. Guess they're gonna make us wait till the earnings call. Oh, okay, hold on. Alright, we're up so far, up 2%, now down. Alright, looks like something got released. Let me see. Alright, outlook and earnings crush estimates. Beat EPS by 5%, revenue by 3%. Up 2% so far. Remember, expected move was 5%. We're not even close to that yet. 2.5% so far. Kind of a very small move for this. Snow is down 2%. CRM down 4. ETD now down 16. Feels like price is struggling to move. I'm sure with the earnings call is more likely to be bullish with what Jensen usually says. All right. All right. I got some stuff to take care of, but if you guys have questions, you can always email me, help@investorcentral.club.com. If you're in the Discord, feel free to DM me if you'd like. We'll take a look at and see what ends up happening with NVIDIA when market opens tomorrow. But I think that this move, unless the earnings call gives it a big push up, I think we open well within that 5% expected move, possibly around 1 to 2% after overnight. So I think we come right back down. Either way, I will see you guys in the Discord tomorrow. Otherwise, for you, those of you that are on YouTube, or if you guys are following Max, we'll see you guys in the streaming platforms. Max is live every day on Twitch. I am live here every Wednesday at market close on YouTube. If you want to join STAX, there is a code down below, investorcentralclub.com/memberships. Use ERULOVESTAX and get your 20% off your subscription. I was hoping for some more fireworks today when it came down to NVIDIA, but hey, I mean, for those that are bullish on it, this 3% move, as long as it holds, isn't too bad. But just be careful. I will remind you, IV crush is a real thing, and if you have too short of out of the money contracts, you got to be careful with that. Have a great rest of your guys' day. I will see you guys in the next one, and as always, happy trading.